They stood over me like I wasn't even there. Told the nurse I was just some old visitor, while I was lying in that hospital bed, my name on every record. And the worst part? The nurse believed them. That's when I realized I wasn't going home to my home. Not without a plan. Not without payback. So I smiled, and bought the one thing they never thought I'd touch, the deed to everything. I don't remember the beeping at first. Just the smell, antiseptic, the kind that clings to your throat. I remember the cold of the 4 against the back of my hand. But mostly, I remember their voices. Not because they were warm or worried, but because of what they said. "She's just a visitor," my daughter-in-law told the nurse, motioning toward me without so much as a glance. A visitor. I blinked, trying to lift my head. I couldn't move much. I'd passed out in the lobby of the very building I paid for with my husband, well, used to pay for. The emergency team said it was dehydration, maybe stress. I think it was more heartbreak than anything. "She wandered in," my grandson added. He looked annoyed. Like I'd inconvenienced him by being alive. The nurse hesitated. She looked between them and me. I tried to speak, but the words didn't come fast enough. Maybe I stammered, maybe I whispered. I don't know. What I do know is, she didn't ask me anything. She just nodded at them and marked something down on her clipboard. I wasn't on the chart. I wasn't listed as emergency contact. I wasn't even noted as family. I was just a visitor. The same way they'd started calling me that at home. The house my late husband and I bought 40 years ago now had new locks and new rules. Apparently, my name on the deed meant nothing once I couldn't keep up. That's what they said, anyway. They meant the kitchen wasn't spotless, or I'd forgotten to unplug the iron once. Not dangerous things. Just aging things. Things you'd expect grace for. But there was no grace left in that house. That day, the hospital discharged me to temporary family supervision, which meant a room in the side annex of the house, the one they called the in-law suite. I called it what it was, a converted laundry room. A twin bed, a rolling tray table, and no windows. And they kept the door shut like I might wander out and ruin something. "I'll bring you some water later," my daughter-in-law said that evening, her smile fake enough to hurt. "You could have asked me first," I murmured, my voice finally returning. "Asked you what?" she replied, still scrolling through her phone. "If we should keep you here or dump you at assisted living?" I closed my mouth. I knew better than to engage. The girl had a sharp tongue and a dull heart. She married my son 5 years ago and has been slowly pushing me toward the edges ever since. "You're lucky we took you in at all," she added before walking out. The door clicked shut behind her. It wasn't luck. It was manipulation. I knew it then and I know it now. They needed my retirement checks to fund their lifestyle. My son was between jobs, again. My grandson dropped out of college. And my daughter-in-law had big dreams of becoming an influencer, whatever that meant. Every month, I watched my account shrink and their new gadgets pile up. One month it was a high-tech fridge. The next, a luxury espresso machine. While I sipped instant coffee alone in the laundry room. They told me it was temporary, until I got better. But I didn't feel sick. I felt erased. And it wasn't just at home. At the clinic, too. They removed me as my own medical proxy. When the doctor asked about treatment plans, they answered for me. When I said I didn't agree, my grandson patted my hand and said, "You're confused, Grandma." But I wasn't confused. I was cornered. So I started pretending. I played the role. I let my hands shake a little more. I asked for help I didn't need. I told them I couldn't remember which pills to take, and suddenly, they were dropping hints about nursing homes. I nodded sweetly. I even thanked them. But while they thought I was slipping, I was watching. Memorizing. Recording. That's when I found the envelope. It was tucked behind the dryer, stuffed between 2 old manuals. Maybe they thought I'd never find it. Or maybe they just didn't care. Inside were old documents, the original deed to the house, the transfer form my husband had filled out before his stroke, the living trust papers. All of it. What stopped me cold was the last page. A printed amendment I'd never signed. Dated 3 months after my husband's funeral. It transferred majority ownership of the house, and all the family assets, to my son and his wife in care of the remaining dependent. That dependent was me. They made me a burden on paper. And yet, I was still alive. Still sharp enough to know what that meant. And still holding one wild card they didn't expect. See, before my husband passed, he and I invested in a commercial property, a modest old office building across town. Nothing glamorous. But he always said, people will always need desks, darling. He left it to me. Entirely to me. Paid off, generating rent, sitting quietly under my name. They never asked about it. Never thought to. And I never told. But sitting in that windowless room, holding the envelope in my hand, I realized what I had. Not just revenge. Leverage. I made one call. To the building's current property manager, a kind woman named Rachel I'd only met once during a holiday visit. I asked for the tenant list. Then I asked about the medical group leasing the ground floor suite, the one where the clinic was. Yes, she said cheerfully, they've renewed for 3 more years. I asked if she'd mind stopping by the house. I had some updates to make. Rachel agreed. 3 days later, I walked into her office in a clean beige blazer and flats. I sat across from her, took out the lease contract, and made a request. I want them out. She blinked. The clinic. Yes. End of the lease. Don't renew. And I want the nurse on record written up. Rachel hesitated. Are you sure? I looked her in the eye. They said I was just a visitor in my own life. Let's make it true for them. The first ripple hit when the clinic received their 30-day non-renewal notice. I wasn't there, of course. But I heard the panic in my daughter-in-law's voice that same evening. Did you hear back from Dr. Conway? She asked my son, pacing in the hallway outside my laundry room cave. They said the lease is ending. But that can't be right. It's some mistake, he mumbled, chewing a mouthful of takeout while flipping through a stack of unpaid bills. I listened quietly through the door. They said the owner requested it personally, she hissed. My son scoffed. Well, whoever owns that dusty old building needs to get their facts straight. Mom used to handle that stuff before her stroke. Stroke. That's what they told people when I started keeping to myself. I never had a stroke. But they liked the narrative better than the truth, that they were bleeding me dry and isolating me while they smiled for social media. And now? Now the story was turning on them. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I was up before the sun. I made instant oatmeal in the corner microwave, my only luxury in this dungeon they called my space. While the rest of the house was quiet, I padded to the back door in soft slippers and stepped outside into the early misty air. The yard was overgrown. The rose bushes my husband once pruned were now suffocated by weeds. It all used to be mine. And I was taking it back. That afternoon, I called my lawyer, Esther. She'd been our family attorney for over 3 decades. Sweet as honey but sharp as a dagger. When she picked up the phone, her voice warmed instantly. Well, she said. You sound better than ever, my dear. Esther, I said calmly, I'm ready to revise some ownership documents. She didn't even need to ask why. We met at her office the next day. I wore a teal cardigan, clean slacks, and my gold wedding band polished to a shine. Esther reviewed everything, the deed to the commercial building, the original will for my husband, the forged amendment I found behind the dryer. She clucked her tongue at the signatures. They even used the wrong date format. Sloppy. I want a full reversal, I said. I want my estate protected. I want them out of the house when I say so. And I want every asset funneled back to me. Esther looked me over with admiration. You were always the quiet one in the room, she said, but not anymore. I've been underestimated long enough, I said. The plan came together piece by piece. First, we updated the LLC registration for the building. I added a clause that prevented future leases to any family member without written consent. Then, Esther drafted a revocation of the forged amendment. Since I never signed it, she filed a fraud complaint as well. But that wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel what I felt, erased, ignored, unseen. So I called the clinic's manager and personally apologized for the confusion. Then I offered them a new lease. With better terms. In a different building. A nicer one. They were hesitant at first, until I offered 2 months rent-free if they moved quickly. Why are you doing this? the receptionist asked me. Because, I said, you deserve a place that won't rot beneath you. Just like I deserved a life that didn't trap me between laundry baskets and pity. The news of the move out hit the house like a thunderstorm. My daughter-in-law slammed a cupboard so hard one of the doors fell off its hinges. "They're closing the clinic," she screamed. "Why? Why now? This is how we pay the utilities." My grandson peeked out from the hallway, scratching his head. "We could move the practice," my son offered weakly. "Maybe set up shop somewhere else." "With what money?" she snapped. "Your mom's check covers everything." And now. She stopped. Her face twisted in realization. "Where's your mother's check?" she said. "Did it come this month?" They scrambled to their shared laptop. I stood in the kitchen doorway, silent. "No deposit," she murmured. "That's impossible." No, it wasn't. I had redirected the account. Esther helped me open a new one they didn't know about. And I'd made sure the next round of retirement deposits would go there. Just like the lease payments from the other tenants. Just like the small inheritance I kept buried in a private account. "I'll go talk to her," my son said. He approached me like I was a bomb with a loose pin. "Hey Mom," he said, scratching his neck like he always did when he was nervous. "Just wanted to check in. How are you feeling?" "Clear-headed," I said, meeting his eyes. "That's great. Really great." He swallowed. "So, the rent check didn't hit this month. And we just got notice about the clinic closing. Crazy timing, huh?" I tilted my head. Strange how things happen all at once. He smiled nervously. "Yeah, well, since you're feeling better, maybe we could look into reactivating the account? Get things flowing again." I sipped my tea. "Sure," I said. "Let's talk. Tomorrow." That night, I locked my door. Just in case. By morning, I had a notarized letter on the table waiting for him. It was simple, effective immediately. I would no longer be contributing financially to the household. I requested full access to the family home or I would initiate legal reclamation proceedings under property fraud laws. Esther helped me write it in plain, powerful English. When my son read it, he turned pale. "You wouldn't do that," he said. "You love this family." "I do," I said softly. "Which is why I tolerated this for so long. But love doesn't mean handing over my life like a donation." My daughter-in-law was less diplomatic. "You ungrateful old bat," she snarled. "You think you can just flip the table and leave us out to dry?" I met her eyes calmly. "That's exactly what I think." And then for good measure, I added. "You told a nurse I was just a visitor in my own life. So now, I've decided to visit the deed office and remind them whose name is still on file." Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish flopping for air. Later that evening, she started packing. The sheriff's car pulled into the driveway just before noon. Not with sirens. No drama. Just quiet authority, the kind that says, "This is happening, and it's happening legally." My daughter-in-law was in the middle of a phone call when she looked out the window and went pale. She dropped the call without a word. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea, calm as could be. My son rushed in from the garage. "What's going on?" I slid a manila envelope across the table toward him. "Notice to vacate," I said softly. "Filed 2 weeks ago. Today's the walkthrough." "You can't be serious," he said, eyes wide. "I'm not joking," I replied. "And neither are the deputies on the porch." He fumbled through the papers like they were written in another language. "You're evicting your own son?" "No," I said, standing. "I'm reclaiming what was never yours to take." That shook him. But not as much as what came next. The sheriff stepped inside. A broad man with kind eyes, but firm hands. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said to me, respectfully tipping his hat. "Ready when you are." I nodded. "Right this way." He and the county clerk followed me room to room as I pointed out damages, missing fixtures, cluttered junk, and even boxes of my late husband's things shoved carelessly into the attic crawl space. My daughter-in-law trailed us, arms folded tightly across her chest, trying to look defiant. But her eyes were darting. Calculating. "Plumbing's backed up in the guest bath," I noted. "Been like that since November." The sheriff wrote it down. They used my linen closet to store old vending machine snacks, I added as we reached the hallway. You might want to check expiration dates. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The law was speaking now. In 2 days, they were ordered to vacate. The house was going back in my name, the utilities were being rerouted, and every dime they owed me for 6 months of mortgage and groceries would be deducted from the fake caregiver reimbursements they'd been charging against my retirement. I didn't want them arrested. But I wanted them uncomfortable. I wanted them to feel the weight of consequences they'd always dodged. That night, I sat in my room, the door unlocked for the first time in months. The window open. The soft wind drifting through the curtains like the breath of something ancient and just. I made tea and flipped through the old scrapbook of our family, back when love was real and not a transaction. There was a picture of my son at 6, missing a front tooth, arms around my waist. I touched the photo gently. I don't hate you, I whispered. But I'm done being your victim. The next day, the tantrums began. First, my daughter-in-law started a GoFundMe campaign titled, "Evicted by Family, Please Help Us Start Over." Then she posted a long rant on Facebook, a half-fiction, half-delusion piece about how I'd gone mentally unstable and torn the family apart for no reason. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I sent the clinic director a small bouquet and a handwritten thank you card for moving out early. I added a note. Sometimes healing starts with a clean space. Thank you for making room for mine. I also emailed my late husband's business partner, the man who had helped him acquire our original properties. I asked him to join me for coffee. He came, of course. I wore a clean teal cardigan and fresh lipstick. He smiled and shook his head. You always were the quiet one, he said. But you play the long game. I learned from the best, I replied. We spent an hour reviewing the remainder of the real estate portfolio I still had a partial claim over, properties they thought I forgot. Turns out, a few signatures and filings later, I could buy out their share. And I did. By the end of the month, I didn't just own the building where they humiliated me, I owned the 2 strip mall lots next to it. One of which contained their favorite nail salon. Guess who didn't get a customer loyalty discount anymore? By Friday, the house was empty. They packed up in silence, loading their SUV with whatever they could. My son tried to meet my eyes once as he walked out with a box of photo frames. I didn't flinch. My daughter-in-law brushed past me, chin high, mouth tight. But she paused on the porch and turned. You think you won, she said bitterly. I looked at her, really looked. Hair frayed, mascara smudged, entitlement hanging off her like a broken purse strap. No, I said. I know I did. Then I closed the door. Behind me, silence. Not the aching kind. The peaceful kind. The kind that says, this is mine again. A week later, I hosted a small gathering. Not a party, just a quiet evening with a few neighbors, some old friends, a nurse who had cared for me truthfully, and Esther, my ever-sharp lawyer. We sipped wine on the back patio, laughed about 70s music, and talked about things that mattered: art, healing, community, dignity. Esther leaned over to me at one point and said, "You know, buying the deed was poetic." I raised my glass. They reduced me to a visitor, I said. So I bought the place and made myself the host. She clinked her glass against mine. To hosts who know their worth, she said. And just like that, I wasn't just someone who lived here. I was the woman who took it back. The woman who reminded them all, just because I aged didn't mean I disappeared. Owning the deed brought me peace, but it also brought attention. Some of it curious. Some of it angry. And some of it, deliciously surprised. The first person to knock on my door was a reporter from the local paper, a young woman with red glasses and a voice too fast for her notebook. She had heard through a mutual connection, my nurse at the clinic, that I'd legally reclaimed ownership of the home I was kicked out of. That was the phrase she used. I corrected her gently. I was never kicked out. I was quietly erased. There's a difference. She asked if she could quote me. I smiled. Oh, you're going to want to. The article ran the following Sunday. Not just a visitor, 75-year-old retakes what was hers, one deed at a time. It went semi-viral online. Not national, but enough for me to get a few emails and handwritten letters from strangers who said they felt seen. One woman wrote, "My son tried to declare me incompetent to access my retirement account. Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy, just underestimated." I kept that letter pinned to the fridge. Because that's exactly what they did to me, made me doubt my own reality. Made me question if I was asking for too much by simply wanting respect in my own home. My daughter-in-law, on the other hand, did not appreciate the press. She tried to write a response article of her own, claimed I was manipulative, mentally slipping, that she and my son sacrificed everything to take care of me. I didn't rebut it. Didn't need to. The comment section did that for me. She's 75, not senile. And she bought the house. Imagine being mad your mother-in-law paid cash to clean up your mess. Some people inherit money. Some people earn it back with class. The best revenge is quiet and public all at once. With the house under my name, I began remodeling. Not for resale. Not to spite them. For me. The walls that used to echo with passive aggression were painted a soft buttercream yellow. I tore down the faux barn door they installed for the aesthetic, and put in French doors that let in real sunlight. I turned the guest room into a reading lounge. I turned my locked bedroom into an airy master suite with a bay window. I turned the storage room, where they once shoved my sewing machine and boxes of old fabric, into a full art space. Every stitch I made now felt like therapy. Needle in. Thread through. Breathe out. I even started selling some of my embroidery designs online. Nothing huge, just enough to fund a few weekend trips and tea sets I never let myself buy before. Funny how taking your life back makes it feel new again. My son didn't visit. Not even once. Not after the eviction. Not after the article. Not after I sent his childhood photos back in a box, tied with twine, so he couldn't say I kept anything from him. That silence used to hurt. But now, I wear it like a shawl I stitched myself. Warm. Earned. Protective. He did, however, email me. One line. "You've humiliated me. Are you happy now?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I hit reply and typed only, "I'm not happy. I'm whole." Then I archived it. One morning, I got a knock at the door. A different one. Gentler. Hesitant. When I opened it, I found a woman standing on the porch, maybe late 40s, dressed in scrubs. Her eyes were cautious, like she didn't know if I'd slam the door or invite her in. "I don't mean to intrude," she said softly. "I was one of the nurses that day." It took me a second, then I remembered. The nurse. The one who stood at the foot of my hospital bed and asked if I was the patient's aunt or friend. The one who had accepted the lie. I opened the door wider. "Come in," I said. "Let's talk." We sat at my dining table over lemon tea and sugar cookies. She apologized. Not dramatically. Not performatively. Just, honestly. "I should have asked more questions. I should have seen it in your eyes," she said. "I've worked in healthcare 20 years, and I've seen people erased like that. But I still let it happen to you." I nodded. "It wasn't just you," I said. "It was what they counted on, that no one would see me unless they told them to." She looked up, eyes glassy. "Well," she said, "now everyone sees you." Later that week, I hosted something special. A gathering. Not of friends, but of women I'd met since all this began. Neighbors, nurses, old clients from when I ran my fabric shop in the 80s, a few folks from the senior center who had their own stories of being brushed aside. We didn't call it a support group. We called it the Take Back Table. We met every Thursday for tea, stories, and strategy. One woman was fighting to get her name back on a joint account her son had taken over. Another was being pressured into signing her condo over for tax purposes. I helped them write emails, rehearse phone calls, organize paperwork. We didn't whine. We organized. And slowly, you could see the light come back into their eyes, the steady kind, like the glow from a candle that refuses to go out. We took a photo one afternoon, 10 of us in my backyard, standing in front of the deed-framed house, smiling like survivors who remembered the storm but chose not to drown in it. But one storm wasn't done. One night, just before sunset, a car pulled into my driveway. I didn't recognize it at first, too clean, too new. But when the door opened and my son stepped out, I felt the air shift. He looked older. Not in years, but in regret. His hands were empty. No boxes. No demands. Just him. He walked slowly to the porch. I met him at the screen door, not letting it open. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice tight. "That depends," I replied. "I just want to talk." I waited, then stepped aside. We sat on the same couch he once tried to block me from using. The same spot where he told the nurse I was just visiting. Now, he sat there like a boy again, not sure where to put his hands. "I messed up," he said finally. I didn't interrupt. "I let her convince me you were confused, that you didn't know what you were doing. But I knew. Deep down I knew." Silence stretched between us. "You were always the strongest person I knew," he added, voice breaking. "And I let you down." I nodded. "Yes, you did." He winced. "I'm not here to ask for money," he said quickly. "Or to undo anything. I wanted you to know I see it now." I looked at him. Really looked. And saw the boy who once brought me dandelions and called them flowers. The man who forgot who taught him strength. "You've got work to do," I said. "And it's not here." He nodded. "But I'm glad you came," I added quietly. "And I meant it." He stood, eyes red. Before leaving, he paused. "That article, what you said about being erased. I read it." I waited. He took a breath. "I hope I never do that to anyone again." Then he left. No hug. No promises. Just accountability. And that was enough, for now. They called me a visitor in my own hospital room. Now people call me Ms. Whitaker, the woman who bought the building. I don't correct them. Because even though the deed is to one house, it feels like I own the whole building now. The story traveled further than I ever imagined. A local documentary crew emailed me. They wanted to do a short film. I said no the first time. But when they came back with the title Erased No More, the woman who rewrote her ending, I said yes. We filmed over 2 days. I wore my teal cardigan and my good slacks, the ones with the ironed crease down the middle. We sat in my sewing room, the sun pouring in behind me, light warming my shoulders as I spoke. I didn't rehearse. I didn't need to. The story was in me now, stitched into my bones. "I don't hate my family," I said to the camera. "But I'll never forget what they did." The interviewer asked gently, "Do you forgive them?" I paused. "I forgive myself for not standing up sooner," I said. "And maybe one day I'll forgive them for not seeing me. But right now, I'm more interested in helping women who haven't been seen in decades." And I meant it. I had already turned the back unit of the house into something I called the Blue Room. A soft name, quiet and respectful, like the women it would serve. It wasn't a full non-profit. It wasn't fancy. It was one room. One private bathroom. A small kitchenette. And peace. That's what I offer, temporary refuge for women over 60 who've been pushed aside, neglected, or manipulated into giving up their homes. A woman named Joyce was the first to stay there. Her son had signed a reverse mortgage in her name and pocketed the cash. She found out when the bank showed up to inspect her property. She came to me terrified, carrying her things in 2 plastic bins and a bag of yarn. "I knit when I'm anxious," she said. I handed her a cup of tea and said, "You'll fit in just fine." People donate supplies now. One girl from a local college art club made hand-painted mugs for our kitchen. A man from the hardware store donated paint for our second room, soon to be the green room. We're growing, quietly. Not through big fundraisers or press releases. Just by word of mouth and reputation. I like it that way. Because now the legacy isn't the family that erased me. It's the women who found their voices because I refused to lose mine. And then came the gala. The same hospital where I was once dismissed invited me to speak at their annual benefit. The same nurse who asked if I was a visitor came up to me afterward, tears in her eyes. "I think about that moment all the time," she said. "I'm so sorry." "I'm not," I told her gently. "Because it made me do this." She hugged me so tightly I thought her lanyard would dig into my collarbone. They played a short clip of the documentary on a projector screen that night. And when my face came up me, in my cardigan and slacks, speaking plainly but powerfully, the room fell quiet. Not out of pity. Out of respect. For once, I didn't have to fight to be heard. I just had to survive long enough to tell the truth. After the gala, a woman approached me. She looked like she might have been in her early 40s, smartly dressed, clipboard in hand. "I'm with New Haven Properties," she said. "We saw your story." I nodded, wary. "We'd like to discuss an offer to partner with you. Buy additional properties. Start a chain of homes like yours. For dignity housing. For women." I blinked. "I'm not interested in getting rich," I said plainly. She smiled. "We're not either. But we'd like to help you change the way elder housing works. Would you consider that?" And just like that, a door I never expected opened wide. I said I'd think about it. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from fear, but from fire. The kind that builds behind your ribs when you realize you still matter. That you're not a burden. Not too old. Not just visiting. You're becoming. Even now. Especially now. A few days later, I walked down the hallway of the building I once sat invisible in. This time, my name was engraved in brass next to the mailbox. Owner, Margaret Whitaker. Underneath it, in smaller text, "The Blue Room Foundation." I ran my fingers over the metal. It felt real. Cold. Powerful. And mine. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I invited my daughter-in-law over. Not to mend things. Not to apologize. To show her. When she arrived, she looked different. Humbled. But cautious, still. I read the article. "Watch the video," she said as she stepped inside. "Of course you did," I replied. She looked around the house, as if seeing it for the first time. "I never understood how much of you was in this place." "You never wanted to," I said, gently but firmly. Silence. Then she asked, "Why did you invite me?" I led her to the framed deed on the wall. "Because I wanted you to see what a signature means." She looked at it. Read it. And to her credit, she didn't ask for anything. She didn't cry. Didn't beg. She just nodded. "I never should have tried to control you," she whispered. "I didn't say it's okay. Because it wasn't. But I said, you're not the first. You won't be the last. But you're one of the few who got to see how the story ends." She left soon after, quiet. And I sat at my sewing table, picked up my thread, and began a new design. A house stitched in blue and gold. With tiny windows. And a glowing door. I stitched it slow, steady. Because healing isn't loud. It's layered. Like embroidery. Like memory. Like revenge. Quiet. Beautiful. Permanent. So now when people knock on my door, they don't ask, "Is the owner home?" They ask, "Are you Ms. Whitaker?" And I smile. "Yes," I say, standing tall. "I'm the one who stayed. The one who took it back. The one they tried to erase." And I invite them in. Because this building, this space, this life, it's not just mine. It's every woman who's been left behind and dared to come back stronger. And in case anyone ever forgets again, the deed still hangs on the wall. Right where it belongs.